Whew, okay, so now that you've digested variables, let's look at arrays, okay, and see what they do. More cool things. Cool things are in front of us. Here we are looking at arrays. Arrays are containers that hold multiple pieces of data. So far, what we've looked at with a variable is that it contain a singular piece of data. We can't put more than one thing in this box. Okay, and that is a variable. So sometimes you want to store more than one item. Okay, and the way we do that is with an array, as you can see here in the example that I have up here. I have an array of Carole King albums, and we store them like so. Like the variable, we use the var keyword to initialize the array. So here's the syntax here. You can see we use the var keyword. We don't use the array or an array keyword. We just use var and it does the same thing. And then we give the array name. It follows the same conventions as the variable name. So you can look at the video before the previous video and you can see what those rules are. But the name of the arrays is formatted the same way as the name of variable. Then we have the assignment operator, and then we store our items into square brackets. Okay, and this is important. We store them into square brackets, and each item is separated by a comma, as you can see here. In many cases, when it comes to arrays, variables, when it comes to arrays, developers will use plural nouns to signify that this container holds multiple items. Okay, so array, matter, let's come down here inside Visual Studio Code now, and arrays, and again the syntax for an array is, say, var, and then the array name, the assignment operator, and then the square brackets, I put my item. I'll say item 1, item 2, item 3, dot, 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 and item n. So however many items that I'm storing in the array, this is how it looks. Some of the common errors that I see with this, especially for code newbies, is when there's no comma in between the each item. That's a big one that I see. Sometimes, but not much, code links will use parentheses or curly brace instead of square brackets. Okay, this needs to be square brackets. All right. And again, each item is separated by a comma. That's really the big one. All right, so let's create an array. Let's put this in practice. We got an array of Outcast albums. Okay. Here I go. Say var Outcast albums. It's going to get square brackets. And we got Southern Playalistic Cadillac Music. Oh, the 90s. They were a fun time. People just taking all kind of liberties with spelling and stuff. Then is ATLians. Then Equimini, which today, September 29th, is the 27th anniversary of that album. That was a great day. September 29, 1998. Outcast, Aquemini was released. A Tribe Called Quest, The Love Movement was released. Most Definitely Quality, Our Black Star, that was released. And Jay-Z's In My Lifetime Volume 2, Hard Knock Life, uh, that was released. So like 4 classic albums, they're released. And yeah, I was in my dorm playing every single last one of them. They all got major play in my dorm. Anyways, we got Southern Playalistic Cadillac Music, AT Aliens of Kumani, my all-time favorite Stankonia, and then Speaker Box slash The Love Below, the one that everyone loves. All right, so here's my array of Outcast albums. Okay, and what you can do with this is you can separate them so that they're all in their own line, like so. I do like to do this when it comes to arrays, particularly when I have like a lot of items, like so, or you can see where I have some hideous spelling. Um, I like to just do it like this because again, it makes it more readable, and I'm always going to push for and encourage uh, clean, readable code. That's where you want to live. All right, so here's my Red Outcast albums. Cool. You can pause this video if you need to. Type all this stuff out because I know it's kind of weird, the spelling and whatnot. However, it's not weird, funky. That's what it is. But yeah, make sure you get those in there. I didn't include Idlewild because technically it's a soundtrack to me and not the album. But anyways, if we want to select certain items inside the array, because that's important, we want to not only build out an array like we did right here, but we also want to be able to access the items. Okay. So the way we access the items inside the array is by using bracket notation. What this means is that we notate the item in the array using square brackets. Okay. An example is just like so right here. We have Outcast albums and then the index value. Okay. So let's talk about this index value. Um, Items inside of an array are what we call zero index. It means that we start counting with the number 0 as opposed to the number 1 in the way we do like with natural counting. Like if I say, hey, count to 3, you're going to say 1, 2, 3, not 0, 1, 2, 3. Okay. But with arrays, they are 0 indexed. So the first item inside of an array has an index value of 0. Okay, and that is the way we word it. Or the item 0 indexed, that would be the first item inside of an array. Okay, and that's how that works. So let's do this. Let's come over here and let's say I want to get the album. Which one we get? Aquemini. All right. If I want the album Aquemini, well, I look here inside of my array and I can see that it is the 3rd item in the array. Okay. So if I want to access it, if I want to call it, or just in this case right here, let's log it out. I'm going to say console.log. I don't need to say Aquemini. Okay. I don't need to do that for this. And where's my clear? Here you are right here. Come on down, clear. I don't need to do this right here. Okay. What I can do instead is say Outcast albums. And then I use square brackets right here. Again, this is what we call bracket notation. Square brackets 2. And when I do that, there you see it logs out Aquemini. Because when I count these items in the array, I say 0, 1, 2. And equimini is the item that is in the that has an index value of 2. And so that one um, will be the one that is logged out. So yeah, we see that excuse me, we store here inside the square brackets the index value of the item that we want, and it will return it. Okay, so with that, we can do all kinds of stuff. Okay, we can write any expression that evaluates to a number. Okay, so like we have here, I'm going to say var 2, and I'm going to assign it the number 2. And now, so what I could do is I could say console.log outcast albums. And instead of storing the number 2 right there, I can put the variable 2. And this makes it a little more dynamic, okay? Because I don't need to know, you know, which index value it is. I don't, or a specific number. Maybe, that number can be dynamic and can be changeable at any time. So I could do that. And you can see that here it returns, again, equimini. So what we're doing here is we are processing inside the square brackets or evaluating this expression to, it's going to return to, and so in which case we say the album or the item in the array with the index value of 2. That's how that works. Doesn't have to be just this right here. We can say console.log outcast albums, and I put in square brackets. I can say 6 minus 3. And so what this is going to do, this is going to return the item with an index value of 3 inside of the array, because 6 minus 3 is 3. So it's going to go find the album with an index value of 3, which is, again, my personal favorite, Stankonia. Those are good times. So yeah, you can write any kind of expression inside of an array. All right. Or inside the square brackets. And if there's a value that matches, it will return it. And what do I mean by that is, okay, so like right here, where I have 6 minus 3, let's say I did something else. Let's say I put index value of 10. Okay. Then what I'm going to get is undefined, because there's nothing in there with an index value of 10. So it will come back undefined. Also, if I said, let's say I did 4 divided by 3. If I did something that came back as a fraction, again, I get undefined. Okay, so there's some things to keep in mind when you're trying to access arrays. Let's look at this. Updating items in the array, because we saw how we can update an item with a variable. How can we update an item with an array? All we have to do is change the updated the item with a certain index and just update. We call it like so, like so, and we update it. So let's look at this. Let's do this example right here. So I'll say var scores and get some, put in square brackets, say 100, 99, 98. Okay. And if I want to update this value right here, is that what I have it as? No, 93. I'll change it to 93. Okay. If I want to update this score right here from a 93 to a 99, I know that it has a index value of 1 just by looking at it. That's, leads to another discussion for later. But this has an index value of 1. So I can simply say scores 1 and assign it 99. And let's see, I'm going to come over here. I'm going to console.log scores. And then I'm going to console.log scores again. Okay. And when we go to our console, let's see what we have here. So look in this console and you see here's how an array is notated. We see that we have this number 3, tells us how many items are inside the array. Also, we can see the array, see the square brackets, and then the numbers here. And you can see that the item with the index value of 1 was updated from 93 to 99. We look a little further here in the console. Let's open this up. And we open this up, we see some information right here. It gives us the index value as well as the item. It tells the length of the item. And then there's also this thing right here, prototype array 0. Open this up. And there's a whole bunch of stuff going on right here. What does all this stuff mean? Well, to be brief, we are creating an instance of an array object, and it is assigned multiple methods that we can call on, methods and properties that we can call on at any point that we want to. Okay, that's another discussion for later because it gets a little deeper, but that's what's happening there. But you can see here how we can update items inside of an array by simply calling on that particular item like we would with a variable, and then assigning it a new value. All right, so now we looked at that. Let's look at how we can add to an array, because there are plenty of times that you want to do something like that. All right, so to add items to an array, one thing we could do, we can use what's called the push method. So dot push, this is one of the methods on the arrays. If we come back here and open up this array, and I can see right here, there's a method right there, dot push. And there's a whole bunch of stuff in there. Again, I go too deep into that, but there's a push method on the array. So we can add items to the array. So let's do that. I'm going to come over here. And in the example, we said var Beatles gets John Lennon Paul McCartney George Harrison, and of course, I'm about to say Lord Ringo. He's a Sir, but Ringo Starr. I think Paul. Yeah, Paul's a Sir as well. He's knighted as well. Okay. Now I'm going to say, just to check it, console.log Beatles. And there they are right there. Let me do it like so. There we go. Let's go to Beatles. Okay. Now, the push method with that is it can it will add an item to the end of an array. Let me bring my clear down. Okay. And I'll say right here, adding items to an array. We have dot push, and the syntax is like this. We have the array name. I'll just say ARR dot push, and inside the parentheses, we place the item that we want to add to the array. And let me also add this dot push adds an item to the end of an array. And that is important. Okay. Dot push adds an item to the end of the array. So if we want to add the fifth Beatle, Billy Preston, we will simply call the array name Beatles dot push, open parentheses, and type in Billy Preston. And now we come over here, and then what we're going to do, we're going to console.log Beatles again. And when we do that, we can see that Billy Preston has been added to the array. So now it goes from 4 items to 5 items. All right. Let's look at how we can remove items from an array. Let's say we want to remove an item from the array. All right. To do that, we use the .pop method. And with .pop, we don't need to place an item inside the parentheses because it's going to know to remove the last item in the array. So let me add that over here. We have .push, and then we have not K-pop, no, .pop. And .pop removes the last item in an array. All right. And again, the syntax is going to be array.pop, open close parentheses like so. And since it's removing the very last item, we don't have to specify which item we're removing. It's just going to know to remove the last item. So I'm going to come back over here and I'm going to say Beatles.pop, which they are. Console.log Beatles. And there you can see back to 4 Beatles because Billy Preston's name was removed. So we got push and we got pop. Okay. And again, push will add an item to the end of an array. Pop will remove the last item in an array. But we can also add an item to the beginning of an array. So to do that, we use .unshift. Again, this is another method on arrays, and we will talk more about methods later. But we can say .unshift. So we're going to add Billy Preston back, but we're going to put him in the front. So we're going to say Beatles.unshift. And then I'm going to type in the string Billy Preston. And now when I log out Beatles, you see right here. Now you can see that Billy Preston has been added to the beginning of the array. Oh, my bad, Natasha. Yeah, I don't want nothing to happen to me. I don't want to end up missing because I'm Talking about K-pop. So anyways, let me we got dot unshift. Okay. And again, that adds an item to the beginning of an array. And sometimes you'll need to do that. The syntax is going to be array dot unshift and then the item. Like so. So we got push, we got pop, we got unshift, and as you can imagine, we have shift. And shift will remove the first item from the array. And again, we just use array name dot shift. So come back over here. I can say Beatles dot unshift. Beatles dot shift. And just like we did with pop, because it knows to remove the very first item of an array. That's so awesome, Greg. Ringo Starr. Altium Biloxi. There we go. We shift, and then console.log Beatles one more time, and we will see that Billy Preston's name has been removed. I'm going to make a comment of this up here. So dot shift, and again that removes the first item in an array. That is array dot shift. Okay, so let's see, is that it? Oh yeah, we got this. That's right. So we're talking about arrays, and I mentioned that the array object or construct the array object has built-in methods. Okay, again, we open this up and then we look at prototype array, and then we see all this stuff here. Okay, it has a particular property that is very useful for us, and that is length. So far with the arrays we've been using has been very they're very small, right? We did Outcast albums and Beatles, right? So it's easy for us to just eyeball and see how many items are in the array. But the numbers can get very large, right? And maybe the numbers aren't just like, some easy to count increment, fives, tens, or 20s or something like that. Maybe it's, 2,964 or something like that, just some weird random number. And it could be a number that changes pretty constantly. We want to be able to figure out how many items are inside of an array and be able to do things with it. Okay, so how can we do that? As you can see here, arrays are objects. We'll discuss what that means later on because there's some things that go into that. But what we do need to know for right now is that objects have properties. One of the properties for an array object is something that is called dot length. And again, dot length property tells us how many items are in the array. So if I wanted to come here, I can come over here and let's say console.log outcast albums.length. And this is going to return a number, the number 5, because there are 5 outcast albums in the array. So dot length, and you can see there's no open and close parentheses behind it. It is not a method. It is a property. So I call this property outcast albums.length is going to return the number of items inside of an array. Uh, you can do the same thing with a string. Okay, and I want to wait till we get here before we looked at with strings. I could do the same thing. Let's say I'm going to make a string right here. I'm going to say var a string and set that to be, it was all a dream. It was all a dream. My mind just went blank. It was all a dream. I used to read, what was the magazines? No. Oh my goodness, my mind just went blank. I need to take a nap. It was all a dream. I used to read Word Up magazine. That's it. Magazine. Salt and Pepper and Heavy D up on the movie screen. Thank you, Ashley. My mind just went blank. I don't know why. But anyway, so I got this string right here, okay? Let's say I want to know how many characters are in the string, okay? I could simply say console.log a string.length. So that .length property also works for strings. And you can see, oh, right on 100. Check me out. It returns the number of characters in a string. And again, white space does count. So white space is counting this. So the .length method will not only count the number of items inside of an array, but it will also it returns the total number of characters in a string. All right. So there's a whole lot more methods. Not going to cover them all in this lesson. But if you're interested, you want to see what they are, what you can do is in the slides, you can click on array docs and it pulls up all the different methods. I think MDN is the source that I use for this. Does this function take place when filling out an application that is count sensitive? Yes, you can look at it like that. Yes, it does, Destiny. So like say you're filling out a form and it's counting the number of characters inside that you've keyed in. Yes, it works something similar to that. That's baked in it. Okay, if that makes sense. But yeah, that's that on that. So that's going to end this video. This was a long one. So maybe in the next video, maybe we'll do a little practice with some variables and arrays. And then yeah, we could do that. And then move on to the next part of these slide lessons, and that is making decisions. So I will see you on the other side of this video.